Königssee in Bavaria, the final day of action this weekend in Berchtesgaden, and it is the four-man bobsleigh, race 7 of 8 in the BMW IBSF World Cup for four-man, the penultimate race of the regular season. Hello everybody, welcome back to Königssee for our coverage of this race weekend. I'm Martin Haven, alongside me again from Belgium and Van Nieuwenhuizen, and this Königssee track is tough enough to get a skeleton sled down or a two-man sled, but it must feel very tiny in a four-man.
It is tough to get down, but it's also one of the most fun tracks in the world to drive, especially those S-curves in the beginning of the track. They have such a great feeling when you get them right. We start off with a short start, very steep, and then it's a quite long runaway until curve 1, the Teufelsmühle. A little tricky if you get the entrance too much on the left side, and then you see going into the S-curves where you want to get a lot of height, getting all the speed you can, and then this fast combination S3, S4, going into the bend away. Bit of a straightaway, but as you can see, it's not straight, and most of the sleds will take 2 tabs before going into Jenner, and then going into the 360-degree Kreisel with 3 waves, where you want to come out with pressure, so you're early onto the chicanes, the little kinks, like we call them as well, and then here the big left-hander Echo ones, going uphill into the final 2 curves. And it's a really steep uphill there, so if you make a mistake, it will cost you a lot of time and speed. And then into the braking stretch.
18 corners, of which we use 14 for bobsleigh, so 14 opportunities to make a mistake and give away time. By the way, if you want to have another view of the track with that 360-degree camera video, that is on the IBSF website. You'll find it on the social media as well, so you'll be able to have a look at that. Well, there's our World Cup rankings. Excuse me, with Francesco Friedrich on top of the pile and teammate Johannes Lautner just a whisker behind. 3 wins in four-man this season for Friedrich, 2 for Justin Cripps, 1 for Hansi Lautner, and the medals have been spread between 7 different drivers. Well, there are the teammates and rivals. They were both the four-man world champion here in 2017 over 4 heats. In the end, they were indistinguishable by even 100th of a second, which was a great result for 2 excellent drivers.
There was an exceptional race, and it was a great result to have, after 4 heats, to still be equal and have a tie. It was an incredible race from both of them.
And of course their teammate Nico Volta in that World Championships also taking a bronze medal. He hasn't had the most success on this track, but expect him to be in there and swinging as well. And we might have some entertaining racing. We've got a good strong start list with 23 sleds in our field. Some coming here for the very first time, like the USA's Hunter Church. Some pretty experienced there in the top 10 runners. All 3 of the Germans naturally, but expect to see the likes of maybe Yun Jong-won, maybe Alexei Stulnev, and certainly some of the younger drivers like Michael Vogt, perhaps Roman Heinrich, perhaps Brad Hall and Dominik Dvorak springing a surprise or 2. Race 7 of the BMW IBSF four-man bobsleigh World Cup in Königssee in Bavaria, a week from the end of the regular season for four-man before we park them for a month prior to the World Championships. Our first sled on ice is Suk Yoon-jin of Korea, 19th World Cup for him, his 12th as a driver. Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching this short start to a long run.
4:99. And anything below 5 seconds here is a good getaway. We'll see some four-man teams go to 4:80 or even faster, but that's definitely a good getaway from the Korean team here.
Well, he's driving the white four-man sled that was normally his teammate Yun Jong-won's, but a couple of races ago, one decided he'd try the newer blue sled, and actually he prefers it, so Suk here is relegated to the slightly older, creakier sled. And as ever on an artificial track, these things really thunder by the crowd.
And he's having a really good run so far. Just had a little brush on the wall in the second chicane going into Kielstein, but apart from that, it's looking very clean. Nice S-curves, good bend away, good controlled Kreisel, and a 49.03.
48.26 is our track record. That was set on the 25th of February 2017 as Johannes Lautner tied for the gold medal with Francesco Friedrich. The start record also from the World Championships that day set by Oskars Melbardis and his crew. And that is a 4.73. How close anyone will get to that today is a question yet to be answered.
And here you can see him driving around that first chicane, that first bend, and then taking a hit before going into Kielstein. Lower line there in Echo 1, and when he releases the steer, he drives up a bit and then dives it down. Has a little bit too much ride pressure there, that's why he stays on the right wall and gets that little tap. But no skids on the uphill section is as good as it gets.
Second of our 23 starters here in Königssee. It is Ralf Bertjens of Latvia, just 22 years old. First met him in Sigulda last year at the beginning of his first World Cup season. This is his 9th four-man race. He hasn't done all the four-man encounters in the 2 seasons. His best is 8th place in Innsbruck last year in the four-man World Cup.
And normally these Latvians are a very strong pushing team, so we'll see how high they set the mark for. 91, a little trouble there, the number 2 guy getting his arms in. He didn't want to wobble the sled going into curve 1, so he was very slow and controlled getting that arm inside.
Particularly compared to last week in Innsbruck and La Plana as well a couple of weeks ago. This is such a short start area.
Yep, it's short, and it's key not to run too far and to get a very efficient load with the 4 guys.
1:15.2, nearly a kilometre an hour quicker than Suk's sled, the sled that won bronze, I beg your pardon, silver in the Olympic Games in 2018.
A little high there in the middle of Echo 1 and high there in the next one as well. Great speed.
Yeah, 1:25.7. We'll see sleds getting closer to 130 Ks next week on the long, fast St. Moritz track, where the speeds are higher than anywhere else during the season. So advantage of 33 hundredths, 48.7, less than half a second off the track record. I wonder, we had the track record broken in women's skeleton first thing on Friday.
And here you can see the slip of the foot of the number 2 guy, and he drops in without getting his arm in. Wants to be very gentle there, doesn't want to rock the sled. He can see how close they are to the wall. And then tries to get his arm in. And here the exit of Kreisel. Nice early transition into the first chicane, and then a little hit, just like the Korean did before going into Kielstein.
There's Ralf Bertjens, 22 years old, 9th four-man World Cup start for him, his first World Cup here. First World Cup ever anywhere in four-man where he can see where he's going for former brakeman Simon Friedli. So he made his 2-man debut yesterday with some very nice driving. A 28-year-old raced in the World Championship last year in Whistler, still as a brakeman for Nico Volta, but he'd already started driving in Europa Cup last year. He started after Pyeongchang, where he raced to 4th place in four-man with Rico Peter. So what can he do here?
They produced some really great start in the 2-man yesterday with Gregory Jones, and now 4.92, just a whisker slower than the Latvians.
Gregory Jones also brand new to World Cup racing. Well, Simon has raced on this track a couple of times, was here in the Europa Cup races in December in 2-man and 4-man, and that's a great looking line.
That's a great looking line indeed. He was a little low in S3, but controlled it. Was very good in S4. That's looking like a little bit too much of a wave in the first wave of Kreisel, but a good exit there. And just like we've seen the previous 2 sleds, I think we're going to see a lot of sleds make that little tap in the second chicane going into Kielstein. Little pressure there, and he lost a lot of speed with it. Whoa, that's early entrance into the finish curve, and it really wobbles the number 4 guy.
Well, got away with that with no major dramas. Simon Friedli, 3rd place at the moment.
They're not so pleased with that.
Yeah. Who's that whacking the sled there? They're all whacking the sled. Now, is that an issue at the start? Now, all the handles went in.
I think it was more of an issue going into curve 1, where you can see he's very early on and hits the take-on and then gets thrown into curve 1, and here coming out of Echo 1, and then again,
wow,
very early entrance, and then it takes the whole team up in the air.
That's a lot of weight to be shifting, a lot of weight. Yeah.
That's some strong words.
Boys are not happy. Well, next up in his 85th World Cup four-man race, Justin Cripps of Canada. He's had 4 wins, 2 silvers and 4 bronzes. Silver in the two-man here yesterday as well. He knows this track well.
490 and fastest speed at the 100 meter after curve 1. Great height there in S2 and S3.
And he's the first driver we get to who raced here last year. He was 5th in the four-man last year.
A great exit, and then just takes 1 tap and avoids the 2 other taps before going into Jenner, just like we've seen him do with the two-man sled before.
1:15.4, good speed, decent exit as well. Not much ahead of Ralph Berchins, but the speed is good. Berchins at 1:25.7, 1:25.8 for Cripps.
Great exit there out of Echo 1 as well. And a tiny drift there before the finish line.
Applause from coach Lyndon Rush. Winner here in two-man. Lyndon take 4-man medals here. Scanning our records, I'm not sure he did actually. Don't remember John Napier doing that, 2009, 2010. Andrew Langer, the winner, ahead of Stephen Holken and John Napier. It's a big day for the USA. Let's take a look at the start again.
Number 2 guy hanging over the pilot, waiting for the 3 and 4 to get in, and then all dropping at the same time, getting their arms in, and then getting those push bars in as well. Long on the exit of Kreisel there. And a little bit long on that first chicane, taking the hit before Kielstein. This is the line we'll see from most sleds.
Yeah. It is so short, that little sequence, for such a long sled. Next up for the Czech Republic, Dominik Dvorak, 27 years old. His 27th four-man World Cup as a driver, having had 7 starts with Jan Verber as his driver when he was a brakeman. World Cup best 5th place in Innsbruck last season. And his best result here, 12th place in last year's race. Yesterday, he was 10th in the two-man in a brand new Valna two-man sled that had never been raced. Now he's back in his familiar four-man.
489. Fastest getaway, but not the highest speed coming out of curve 1. These guys are known for good starts, produced good starts all season. A little drift there, but gets it under control, doesn't tap the wall. Now takes the 2 parallel taps going into Janet.
Tight for the lead, just 200s behind Cripps going into the Kreisel.
He's very long there and takes the same hit as we've seen every sled do so far.
Yep. And the only ones that have another taxi bobs that are a little more gentle with their occupants. 1200s back, 3rd fastest sled at the moment.
And an early entrance there as well. Gets it up, 48.80.
All right, so that's a 10th behind Ralph Berchins in the battle of our younger drivers. Berchins giving away 5 years, though, to Dominik Dvorak.
And here the exit of S4 going into the bend away. And just has a little bit too much pressure in the back end of his sled, and you can see it wobble around, but he controlled it. And then the exit of Kreisel, very long on there. Doesn't get great height in the first chicane, and that's why he has to do a lot of steering. Then the back end takes 2 taps, jumps into Kielstein.
A four-man sled's heavy enough to lift on its own, isn't it? Never mind with 400 kilo odd guys in it. That's an awful lot of energy. 5 sleds down, Justin Cripps, our leader, by 700s. Race 7 of 8 in the BMW IBSF four-man bobsleigh World Cup. Königssee, Bavaria, Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching Oskars Kiebermanis of Latvia, the silver medalist on this track last year at the beginning of his first run.
492. Normally this team is always one of the fastest pushers, but with the injury of Oskar Kiebermanis, they're still tinky and a little bit slower. But great effort from the guys. He had to sit in last race in Eagles, so it's good that he's back pushing with them.
And his focus is going to be trying to score strongly in Sigulda, and then, of course, the World Championship, so no point aggravating the injury here.
It's a very clean exit there and a really good line going into Kielstein. This is the smoothest we've seen so far from everyone.
Just 700s back. Teammate Ralph Berchins.
There.
Ooh, he's not going to be ahead of Berchins. He's going to be third at the line. He is, but he is only 700s behind Berchins, 1400s off the lead.
It's an impressive run of his teammate.
Yep, and Berchins starting 491 with his crew. Lots and lots of Latvian fans, Austrian fans from just across the border as well. Bavarian fans, some German fans there as well. A lot of energy going into the sled, not all of it going forward though. That is synchronized dropping in, isn't it? Great work from the Latvian team.
You can see they've been pushing together for quite some time.
Yeah. I'm liking the Alpenhorn down there at the bottom. Francesco Fruzic's 59th four-man World Cup start today. 29 years old, bronze medalist here in last year's race. Best here, 2017, gold in the World Championships. Best World Cup, though, only bronze medals. Winner again in the two-man yesterday. Can he go to the top step of the podium today?
479.
Wow.
That's a great start.
600s off the record.
Yeah, out pushing everyone by more than a 10 so far. And really building on his exit speed as well.
Brand new sled for him this year, using an FES four-man.
There wasn't a perfect exit. Takes the tabs there.
Well, he nearly crashed in the lower labyrinth yesterday in the second run of the two-man and only won by 5100ths instead of a clear second. That's tidier. Still with the lead by nearly a quarter of a second. And what's the speed like? 124.5. Yeah.
But it robbed him of some speed.
He'll keep that to the line. 400s in front. As Torsten Margis said yesterday, you see, he is human after all.
They want some tight racing.
Yeah, they do.
They get some tight racing. Oh, he's in pain. The number 3 guy is in pain.
So who's at 3? Is that Martin Grotkopp or Candy Bauer? Oh, he really is in a lot of trouble, isn't he?
Yeah.
Looks like that's Alexander Schiller at the back, and the driver gets out to help with the sled.
Coming out of S4, but a great correction of that drift. Gets his sled better back under control. And here, the exit of Kreisel. You can see him pointing it over early into the chicane and then driving it hard around that first chicane. Hitting and lifting into Kielstein.
Well, here are the crew down at the bottom. I'm not sure if it's Martin Grotkopp, I think it is. Candy Bauer's got his helmet off, he looks okay. Grotkopp was bent double a moment or two ago. So maybe Torsten Margis will be brought in off the bench for the second run. Well, next up, Hunter Church of the USA, 10th World Cup of his four-man career, his 5th in Europe, and as with yesterday in the two-man, racing on a track where he has a total of 8 practice runs over the two-man and the four-man sleds. So a track he has never been to before, in a country he's never been to before. Lots of support from friends and family here, though. Josh Williamson, Jimmy Reed and Chris Horn are the crew of this US sled.
They had a great result last week. Their first medal in the four-man World Cup. And they're definitely looking to build on that. 487. Wow, it's...
You know, they are just working so well as a unit. Tiny team, just one sled for the guys, one sled for the women, and they are really living in each other's pockets, but it's working so well for them.
And a great exit there. Drives it around that first bend, takes the parallel taps. Some good-looking lines in the upper part of the track. Good control here in Kreisel. And let's see how he can manage the exit and the chicanes. Ooh, big hit there going into Kielstein. good line, lower line in Echo 1, dives it out. A little bit high on that final one, and late entrance, pops it off.
12 hundredths off the lead, a track he has never raced on before this weekend.
Impressive stuff.
Yeah, so ahead of Oskars Kibermanis, Dominik Dvorak, and Suk Yoon-jin, and our rookie Simon Friedli. And it's been like this all year. You know, when he drove well in Lake Placid, everybody thought, well, that's probably the best he's going to do all season. Actually, it's about the worst he's done all season. That just tells you everything you need to know about the cohesion of this unit. They are starting so fast, and like Stephen Holcomb always said, I rely on these guys to give me the space to make a mistake and get away with it.
And here you can see the big hit and a lot of airborne time going into Kielstein.
We've seen worse. And Hunter Church.
With that.
Nico Volta is next up for Germany, 29 years old. 44th World Cup start for him. 7 wins in 4-man, including 2 here. 7 silver medals, including 2 here.
488, that's a great start as well. 6th fastest speed going into curve 1. Good height there in S1. You can see he knows how to get the height in the S's. Just touches the wall there, but stays straight.
Driving a Valna 4-man sled for the first time in his career.
Not great speed though going into Kreisel.
Yeah, the gap is opening.
That's a good line there through the chicanes.
Does not look like a medal-winning run right now. Needs to find speed at the bottom.
Good exit there.
Only the 5th fastest sled, though. He's going to be behind Hunter Church at the line. He is behind Hunter Church at the line by 600ths, tied with Oskars Kibermanis. Bit comme ci, comme ça, that run, wasn't it?
That didn't look so bad, but somehow he didn't have the speed going into Kreisel.
Just a little bit of a perplexing season at the moment for Nico Volta. Didn't do the races before Christmas because of injury, so he started in Winterberg.
Almost a slip there, but just gets on the bunk and gets in.
Did just get in, yeah. The driver kept it straight. Luckily, it's a short run.
And coming out of Kreisel, a little touch there.
Yeah,
that's one of the best lines we've seen through that part.
Much less than some others, so I wonder what the runner selection has been.
Yeah, they're looking at each other like, I don't understand what just happened here.
Yeah, that wasn't as bad a run as the time makes it look. Well, we've just had one of our Olympic silver medalists from the 4-man race in Pyeongchang. Now comes the other. Nico Volta is down in the finish comparing notes with Francesco Friedrich, while Jung Jong-won of Korea is at the start. Well, one surrendering his silver medal winning sled for this newer one that he thinks is a bit less creaky.
495. And already 3/10 behind. That's all because of that slower start.
Yeah, not a fast start, not great velocity, and that's going to bury him.
That's a lot of skidding and hitting there in that bend away. Only 113.7 going into Kreisel. That's 2 kilometers per hour down on the fastest speeds we've seen so far. He's really bleeding a lot of time. Has good line through the chicane, but just doesn't have the same speed as we've seen before from other sleds.
Finished 6th here last year. That's his only ever top 10 on the track.
That's
his next best result is 18th.
Behind Simon Friedli, 10th place out of 10 sleds.
And Friedli didn't look like a rookie. One looked like he'd never driven here before on that run. All the mistakes.
And then this is just how important this exit of curve S4 is. If you get out unstable, if you start hitting walls, drifting, skidding, it just takes away all of your speed there. And it's hard to come back from that.
That cost him another 1,500s, just that bend away.
And it takes away so much speed going into Kreisel. at that point, the track doesn't drop so much anymore, so it's hard to gain that speed again.
Well, Francesco Frugic is our narrow leader after the first 10 sleds from Justin Cripps and Ralph Berchins, with Hunter Church in 4th.
Let's go.
Here we are with the 11th sled, race 7 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. It's Nico Volta of Switzerland, Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis in the booth watching the action from the finish. World Cup best for Nico Volta, 7th place in Lake Placid back in December.
He did get to the top 6 in the World Championships last year in the 4-man.
Finished 5th, yeah.
4.9 before. Oh, and a hit there on the take-on of Teufelsmüller as well, just like we've seen his Swiss teammate Simon Friedli do.
Last race in for here was the Junior Worlds in February 2019. He took the bronze medal in the 4-man. Yikes!
Hits the exit of S4 and goes into a big skid there in the straightaway, early onto Kreisel. A little bit wavy there. We don't have any speeds from this sled, so and a little hit there.
At the moment, he's still not doing as badly as Jung Jong Won, who started pretty much the same speed. Michael Vogt has really developed as a driver in the 2 seasons we've been watching him. He's come from 9th at the start up to 8th, despite more hits than Elvis down the bend away. And genuinely, that's possibly the worst you'll ever see him drive down that bend away, and still outdrove his start to be in 8th, ahead of both Koreans and teammate Simon Friedli.
I think his equipment is running really great if you can have that result with this line coming out of S4. Just hitting there, and the whole back end gets away, and then overcorrecting a little bit, and then here comes out of Kreisel, hits the take-on of the first chicane, but then controls it well, and that's a good line through the chicanes. Runner stayed on the ice, so that's energy forward and not upward.
Knows how to react, doesn't he? Can't wait to see what he does, and Mikkel Kwonen when he comes to World Cup next week in Samoritz. For Russian Alexei Stulnev, it's a 39th 4-man World Cup start, best of which was 3rd at this track in 2017. 4th in Winterberg at the beginning of the European campaign is his best 4-man result this season. Again, a little bit of an up and down history with this track, and I think a lot of drivers do because it's so easy to get it wrong.
491.
That's
a
good.
Good getaway. Little jump there on the take-on of Teufelsmüller. Just like he did in the 2-man, he's wobbling his head coming out of curve 1. I really wonder what
is that about?
What he's doing there.
That's the bob in bobsleigh.
Little skid there as well. Not as bad as we've seen Michael Volta in the previous. 115, good speed, but big wave there between curve wave 1 and 2 of the Kreisel.
Driving himself up into 4th position at the moment.
Very nice chicane.
Yeah, that's where the speed is coming from. How close will he be to the top 3? 5th fastest speed, it's him or Hunter Church in 4th. No, he's down to 7th. Didn't find the speed below the labyrinth.
He was very high in the Echo 1 and then dives it out, but you could see a little sideways movement of his sled, and it robs him of the speed going uphill, and that's where it went away.
100th ahead of the Czech Republic's Dominik Dvorak, 200 behind Oscar's Kibermanis and Nico Volta, and 800s behind Hunter Church. 900s out of the medals. It's going to be entertaining second heat, isn't it?
And here, coming out of S4, drifts, taps, and then straightens it out. Going into Kreisel, just drove the first wave a little bit too long and drove himself into the dip, making the second wave go higher up and harder to control.
Stuff to close up and clean up in the second heat. And he's not far away. Eye of the Tiger for our reigning European 4-man champion, the 2017 joint world 4-man champion, and possibly more importantly to everybody here, the local Bavarian hero, with Benedikt Hertel joining Christopher Weber and Florian Bauer on the sled. 31st four-man World Cup start for Hansi, who's had 2 World Cup wins here as well as that World Championships.
Yeah, and his local brakeman, Christian Ross, he's out with injury this week, so he was very disappointed not to be able to race on his home track together with Hansi.
So 300s behind at the start. Good exit out of S4.
And good speed there in the bend away as well.
3rd different make of sled being driven by the 3 German drivers. This is a new Wallner.
Little wave there between wave 1 and 2. Dipped a little bit. Hits the take on as well before going into Kielstein.
Short on training because he's not doing the 2-man race.
And Echo wants.
Oh, but he's 100th away, only the 4th best speed. Who's going to be the leader of the line? It is Hansi Lautner. So he doesn't do the 2-man, so he's had 4 fewer trips this weekend than his 2-man and 4-man driving teammate and rival Francesco Friedrich. And there were mistakes there as well.
Yeah, that wasn't a perfect run, especially the exit of Echo 1. He was very long on there, and then came off with a little bit of a skip going uphill. If he cleans up on that, he might extend his lead in the second heat. Ooh, little stumble there,
yeah.
Number 2.
Just got caught up on the back of the driver's seat, did not distract.
Interesting to
Hansi.
see that he's not wearing a visor, though. A lot of the guys on number 2 position like to wear a visor because they get a lot of wind as well. And here you can see long on the exit, drops it off, and then skids, hits, and skids again.
And yet, still accelerates. There's alchemy there somewhere, isn't there? Hansi Lautner looking happy with that. Well, next up, in his 15th World Cup start as a driver, Roman Heinrich of France, the 29-year-old's World Cup best, 8th place in Calgary, the season finale last year before we went to Whistler for the World Champs. Best this season, a pair of 11th place finishes. 2 World Cups here. Here's how his progression has been going. 21st 2 years ago, 14th last year.
These guys need to get 2 top 10 finishes in the next 2 races to get some extra funding or to continue their funding. So these are very important races for their 4-man team. 495 getaway, good height there in S1. Long on the exit there of S4 and taking the tap and a big skid again, just like we've seen him do in the 2-man. Tries to control it, but the backhand just gets away and very low speed going into Kreisel.
Must have chosen fat runners for speed, but they're on a knife edge. Oh.
Going into the second chicane.
14th out of the 14 sleds so far off the 12 fastest start. No speed
Dives
at the
off
bottom.
Inside wall. This is not the best run we've seen him do.
No.
You know he can drive better than that.
Max Robert doesn't have much of an expression to sum that one up, and that probably sums it up. He can't believe it.
That's
every mistake in the book creeping into that run.
Yeah, and it's very hard on a driver. You know, he made that mistake yesterday, skidding in the bend away, and then you stand at the top of the track and you think, I can't make the same mistake, can't mess this up, and then it just happens again. Comes out, overdrove it a little bit, and then breaks into a big skid, tries to correct it, but his back end just doesn't touch the wall. And then back end just has
when it does, it just pinballs its way down the track. Desperately disappointing for Roman Heinrich.
Coming out of Kreisel with a lot of left pressure, and that's why he's late on that first chicane, hits and hits again. Those hips are gonna be smashed up.
Yeah. And his face says all you need to know. And such, I'm afraid, is sport. One more run to go. He can turn it around.
If he gets the second run.
If he gets the second run.
This is gonna be...
Could be the question for Roman Heinrich. What about Brad Hall? 26 World Cup four-man start for him. His best bronze medal in Salt Lake in 2017. His best this season, 8th in Lake Placid. Was 12th here in January 2017, only 19th though last year, but his season has been going so well this year.
Especially after New Year's, had a bit of a struggle in Europa Cup before Christmas. 496.
Got two brand new men in the team, Taylor Lawrence and Luke Dawes from the Royal Marines and from the Parachute Regiment, and it takes time for the team to gel.
A little touch there on the wall coming out of S4, but controls it. And then takes it 2 taps going into Janner. Decent speed coming into Kreisel, good controlled line.
14th at the start, up to 12th place on the splits, 10th into the labyrinth.
Only a little brush there going into Kielstein. Not a bad looking run so far.
Speed is good, 5th fastest speed. This is going to be well up inside the top 10. 10th place at the line, 3300s back, 700s off 9th, 800s off 8th, 900s off the tie for 6th position.
14 fastest start, 10th at the finish line.
Yep.
Very decent driver, Brad Hall, and a good job from their team. Here coming into Kreisel. Very flat, controlled line. I don't know if that's just maybe a little bit too much driving going on. And then here coming long on the exit, early onto the first chicane, drives it around. Only a little brush there, a little jump going into Kielstein. That's definitely one of the better sleds we've seen so far in that part of the track.
It's his driving that has come on so strongly in the last couple of years. Johannes Lautner from Francesco Frugic and Justin Cripps, your top 3. 15 sleds down, 8 to go. Next up is Great Britain's Lamin Dean, the 38-year-old Grenadier Guardsman. Parachute Regiment's Ollie Butterworth joining Ryan Letts and Ben Simons on this 4-man sled. 10th in Eagles last week, his best of the season.
496. Very efficient load of the guys.
And exactly the same as their teammates. Both British drivers did the Europa Cup races here in December.
Very low there in S1, but good height there in S2. Corrected it well. A little long in the exit, takes a hit, but luckily controls it before it started skidding.
14th at the start, 13th place. Not quite the speed from Brad Hall's sled.
Good exit there. Nice way through the chicanes.
But like Brad Hall, he is driving himself up towards the top 10. 11th on the splits at the moment.
High there, dives it out going into those last 2 uphill curves.
It's going to be right behind his teammate. He is. In fact, he's tied with Michael Vokes. They are both in 11th position. And another sled slots in front of Roman Heinrich, as you suggested. Maybe the Frenchman is in danger of not getting a second run. That would be a disaster. And the boys all with brand new suits on this weekend. Looking even sharper than ever.
Long there on the exit of S4. And then hits. It looked like he was going into a skid, but controls it, takes a tap there. And here, early off Kreisel, drives it around that first chicane. Not a bad line at all. A little bit lifting there of the left back runner.
Looks like he had all the time in the world to steer it down there through that labyrinth. There's Lamin Dean, tied for 11th spot. 17 sled on the ice, first heat of 2. Race 7 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup is Patrick Baumgartner of Italy, the reigning 4-man European Cup champion. And he's got lots of knowledge on this track.
498. And a good entrance into Teufelsmühle. Good exit speed as well out of that start. Good height there, a little early on the take on of S2 though.
Not great starting speed, but he's managed to negotiate himself from 16th at the start up to 12th place coming onto the bend away.
And a very good line there in the bend away, good control.
What speed has this Ferrari sled got? 1:14.1.
Ooh, really dives up the exit of Kreisel there, but clean through the chicanes.
Still in 14th place.
Little skid there going uphill out of Echo 1.
Trying to chase down Suk of Korea, and he's just behind Seaman Friedli, tied with Yun Jong-won, the Olympic silver medalist, which is normally not a bad place to be, but here, not necessarily guaranteed to be a great run from one, and so it's proved.
Control the first wave of Kreisel, and then the second again. Very controlled line, and here you can see him slide off a little bit of the exit of Kreisel. You want to come out there with a little pressure, so you go early onto that first chicane. But got through quite nice, only a little tap going into Kielstein.
Last week's 14th place in Innsbruck, his best finish in 14 World Cup starts in four-man up until now. Next up with half that number of starts today, his 7th start in four-man, Dmitri Popov. World Cup best is 7th from Samoritz last year. He has a host of Europa Cup and Junior World Championship race under his belt here, and he was here in December as well, although, and you were too, and you said yesterday the track was very different then to how it is now.
Oh, it was very different then, especially because there were also 30 monobobsleds going on the track and rattling the track up quite a bit, to be honest. 493, it's good to see that he's back pushing with his team. He was sitting in for yesterday's two-man race, low line there, and a low line in a stew as well. That's just not collecting the speed you want. A little tap and skip there.
Well, the low lines work for him. 11th fastest start. He was up to 8th onto the bend away.
A little wavy there, but good control.
Let's see how this goes. 11th as he comes off the Kreisel.
Very clean through the chicanes.
Needs the kind of speed that Alexei Stulnev had at the bottom. Stulnev is 8th at the moment.
Good exit there, just a little tap on the right side going into that uphill section.
Not great speed at the bottom. 49.06 leaves him in 14th place. So Dmitri.
Brakemen are shaking their head.
Yeah. A little bit more proficient in the four-man than the two-man at the moment.
Here you see the low line and then a lot of height at the end of the curve. And here again, low line, and then you have a lot of pressure at the end of the curve. And it's just not as smooth and free-flowing as you would want in those S-curves. And here, diving it off of Echo 1, tapping, going into that uphill part.
So Dmitri Popov ahead of Seaman Friedli by 900ths in 14th place. For the Netherlands next, Ivo de Bruin, 19th of our 23 sleds, the 33-year-old in his 32nd World Cup start. And Jelen Franchik telling me earlier in the week that it was not Dennis Venke who was pulling him back in their slip at the start last week. It was the other way around. He said, I saved Dennis. So we'll just get that record correct.
It is true.
World Cup best for Ivo de Bruin, 8th place here last year. Let's see if he can do it again.
Just a little drift there, 506. And that left push bar went in right away without even touching it. Very high there in S1.
19th at the start. That's not going to help them.
No.
But we've seen some pretty bendy bendaways. That's a lot better.
Very good through the bend away from Ivo. A little high there, high in the first wave as well. Now gets it back under control. It was a little rocky in the first run in the two-man, but this is looking like a good line.
Dives out nicely. Not great speed, still only 18th ahead of Roman Heinrich.
Great exit there.
Trying to chase down Yun Jong-won and Patrick Baumgartner. Doesn't get them at the line. 1400s behind. Familiar face of your brakewoman, Sarah Ertz there.
Yeah, and our physio, Joppa. 19th at the start, 18th at the finish. I think they're looking for more than that.
Yep. Well, again, that slip at the start or the confusion getting into the sled hasn't helped them.
You can see push bar already going in, and then took a little longer to load. And that's why he goes to the left wall coming out of the grooves. And here going into the chicanes. Just touching that left wall in the second chicane before going into Kielstein, but that's That's not a bad line at all. We've seen a lot of sleds do this.
Yep. Ivo de Bruin 18th, Robin Heinrich 19th of our 19 sleds. Next up is Xiao Yijun of China. Not sure how they celebrated Chinese New Year yesterday, with an early night, probably after a day in the gym. 5th World Cup start for him. His best, 16th place in race 2 at Lake Placid. Raced here in the Europa Cup in December and the Junior World Championships last year, where he finished 10th in the 4-man competition. First of all,
a lot of noise there at the start for the Chinese teams.
Yeah. First of all, 2 Chinese 4-man sleds, and marginally the more experienced of the 2 drivers.
A little trouble getting that one push bar in 494.
12th fastest start. Let's see what he can produce down this track.
Good lines there in the S-curves and a really nice exit. Takes a tap in that first bend. 4 parallel taps in that bend away. Not great speed going into Kreisel, but a good control there. Early into that first labyrinth. Little rattle, but nothing major going into Kielstein. Dives it off with a lot of pressure and hits the right wall, going uphill.
Speed is pretty low, and 18th at the line, ahead of Ivo de Bruin. 2-man world champion on this track, Pierre Luders. Just a little frown as he sees the end of that run. He's their driver coach. So 20 sleds down, 20 sleds in the race. There are room for no more, but there are 3 more hopefuls waiting at the top of the track.
You can see the brakeman, the number 4 guy, trying to get that right push bar in.
Got it in the end, often having to lift it to allow it to flick back in.
Exactly.
Rather than hitting it. Not sure which particular moment Pierre was under-inspired by there, but Xiao Yijun is in the race at the moment with 2 sleds behind him of Ivo de Bruin and Roman Heinrich. 20 sleds down, 3 still to go. Johannes Lautner, narrow leader from Francesco Friedrich and Justin Cripps. Martin Haven and Anne van Nieuwenhuis watching the final sleds in the first heat of race 7 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. Marcus Treichel, 10th here last year, running this week with his broken foot, and actually 494.
And 7th fastest speed.
Yeah. So that's 3 pushers and a pedestrian. I think he wouldn't claim for more than that.
Very good job from both Marcus and his team.
Holds the slide.
Oh, and just a drift there between those last 2 taps.
Looking towards a top 12 run at the moment.
Ooh, but dives it off, hits the wall. This is gonna be rattly.
Speed is low.
That robbed him of a lot of speed, that hit out of Kreisel.
Oh, only the 17 speed. He's not going to be 12th at the line. He's going to be 18th at the line. And that had all the hallmarks of potentially a top 10 run when he just got away with it on the bend away.
Just 200s behind the tie from Baumgartner and Union 1.
Yeah.
And 300s behind Simon Friedli.
Yeah, so almost 15th.
Very good-looking run until that point where he just took it out of Kreisel, a little too abrupt and hit the wall. Here coming out of S4, just hitting the wall, but controlled it well. And then here coming off Kreisel, too sharp, hits the inside wall there. And then it's a lot of driving going on to get it around.
Yeah, the walls are directing the sled at least as much as the driver is there, aren't they? Well, things to think about, but he's in the race. Unfortunately, Roman Heinrich is out. 2 to go. Jin Zhan of China, 4th World Cup for the 25-year-old. The winner of the 4-man race, a surprise result in the National Games of China that they held in Winterberg a couple of weeks ago. A huge result for the driver and for the province that funds him as well. Every 4 years they have the National Games of China for all their summer and winter sports, and it is a massive, massive result for him. World Cup best, 15th in race 2 at Lake Placid in the 4-man. Raced here in the Europa Cup and Junior Worlds last season, so he knows the track. Now, will he get a frown or a thumbs up from Pierre Luders? Let's see.
495, 100 slower than their teammates, but a big hit going into Teufelsmühle. He was completely on the left side going in, and it's gonna rob him of a lot of speed. And hits there again out of S4, straightens it out though. Still decent speed going into Yennet.
1:14.2, that's not bad. Fastest of all, 1:15.6.
Good exit there, a little long, touching the wall before going into Kielstein.
And again, all these hits are robbing him of speed. 1:24.14.
15th.
Yeah, 15th place at the start and 15th place at the line.
49.09.
That was a smile.
That was, I don't know if we can call that a smile.
As our director just said, yeah, for Pierre, it was a little smirk. 15th place for Jin Jian of China, ahead of Seaman Friedli, Patrick Baumgartner, and Yun Jung
on the
Won.
left side there and jumping into curve 1.
Well, look, and even with that, he's beaten the Olympic silver medalist.
Well, that was not a run we are used to from Yun Jung Won.
Well, here it is, actually. He's barely been in the top 20 in almost all of his races here. This is not a good track for one. But Jinjian is in, and out is Ivo de Bruin. So who is our man on the bubble now? It is his teammate, Xiao Yijun. One sled remains. We will either have 2 Chinese sleds in the race or 1 Chinese sled and 1 Japanese sled, because this is our final slider in the first heat. 5th World Cup start in 4-man for Ryo Shinohara. Coach Peter Hintz drove in the veterans race, in the historic race yesterday, with a degree of aplomb considering the vintage of the machinery that he was given to use. World Cup best in La Plania, 19th place. And in fact, that was the only one of his 4 previous 4-man starts where he made the cut. Let's see if this will be the second.
Running it quite long, and I hope they control it before they come out of the groove. 5:02.
Well, they don't have the fastest starts. They certainly have some of the most dedicated sounding bellows away from the line.
Low line there in S3, and then comes out of S4 with a little bit too much pressure, drifting left and right. Gets it back under control there in the end of the bend away. Low speed going into Kreisel though.
Yeah, he has
Big
had
wave.
Europa Cup races here and did the Junior Worlds in February last year. He was here in December.
It's a good line, but a little bit low in Kielstein.
Just does not have the speed in the sled.
Diving it off a little sideways.
Not going to make it in. He's 22nd at the line with a 49.55. So Xiao Yijun holds on in 20th place. Ivo de Bruin, Ryo Shinohara, and Roman Heinrich are the 3 who do not get to go through. So Ryo Shinohara in his 5th World Cup, Ivo de Bruin in his 32nd, and Roman Heinrich his 15th as a driver.
Big wave there, 2nd and 3rd wave of Kreisel, and that's why he's so high in the exit and drops out. Actually gets away with it with a quite smooth labyrinth, but very low line there in Kielstein.
Yep. Nice work by Ryo Shinohara through the lower labyrinth, but did not have the speed on board by the time he got there. Andre Langer, the Japanese coach, being interviewed down at the bottom, one of Germany's bobsled legends. And another one is our race leader by a whisker, 400ths of a second. What's that, maybe the depth of the white paint on the bumper or something at the line? Francesco Frigic is 2nd. Justin Cripps 3rd, 1600s cover the top 5, a quarter of a second the top 9. This is going to be a fun race. Hansi Lochner will go last in the second heat as our race leader, defending the slenderest of leads. 3 years ago, he and Francesco Friedrich tied over 4 heats for the World Championship gold. Not beyond the bounds of possibility that might happen again for the World Cup gold here. Join us for our second heat action. We start at 1500 local, 1400 Greenwich Mean Time. Our fast 20 go through for the penultimate 4-man race of the regular season. Till then, from Anne van Nieuwenhuis, me, Martin Haven, and the IBSF TV crew, Auf Wiedersehen from Berchtesgaden. We will be back in 35 minutes from now.